Hello, programming community. As mentioned in one of my previous blog posts, or whatever you want to call them on my channel, I wanted to quickly show you how you can create the terrain sets in Tiled, because I could never figure out how they work. I read the documentation multiple times. I will also link it to the video description below. But for me, I never figured out how it works 100% accurately. And finally, I figured that out, and I wanted to share that knowledge with you. And in addition, I will show two other minor tricks that I found out in Tiled, which I also did not know before, and where I struggled during the streams with Quilly Jumper. And finally, I want to show you a Gradle task, which I also mentioned during the streams of the development of Quilly Jumper, where I wanted to develop something or implement something that you can export the classes and the enumerations that you can nowadays create in Tiled as well for projects, that we can automatically create Kotlin enumerations out of that, so that you don't need to manually synchronize the enums and the classes that you have in your Tiled map editor and in your real game classes in the Kotlin code base. So enough chit-chat at the beginning. Let's start directly into it, and we will start in Tiled. So the first thing that we are going to look at is the terrain tile set. So we will create a new map, and it's a 16 by 16 tile set. That's just the assets that I'm going to use, and I will also link them in the video description below. They are called Ninja Adventure something, which are free to use on itch.io, so you can download them and use them as well. And our map is currently empty, so we will need to create a new tile set. And for that, we are going to use from this Ninja Adventure asset pack under backgrounds and tile set. There is a tile set floor, which can be used as an example for what I'm going to show. And for simplicity, we'll just embed the tile set in the map, so that we don't have to save it separately somewhere, because this is just some temporary map that I'm now using, and I don't need to save that. I can skip that. Okay, so we have now our tile set, and now you know that there, or you might have seen it, there is another tab here below, which is called Terrain Sets, which is currently empty, and we cannot do anything with that. And it says here that we need to do something in the tile set. And this is what I'm going to show you now. So let's go back to the tile set, and then we click on the edit button somewhere, edit tile set here. And in here, we can now create a terrain set with this button here, that one here. And in the tutorial there, when you create a new tile terrain set, it is described that you need to mark, for example, if we want to have a terrain for dirt and one for grass, which will be our example, so the dirt and the light grass here, then you need to mark the areas which are grass and the areas which are dirt, and then somehow magically Tiled figures out how to automatically convert it to the proper tiles that you want to use then when you draw the terrain. And there are, first of all, 3 different terrain sets. There is a corner set, an edge set, and a mixed set. And I'm not sure if that is properly explained in the documentation. The last time when I read that, I at least did not see that. And now I just know a little bit, or I think I know what it means, but I will come to that back a little bit later. For now, just know that the assets that we have here, this is a corner set. It's not an edge set and not a mixed set. I will show that in a moment. We have a corner set. And let's call that, I don't know, dirt and grass, for example. Is grass with one S? I'm not sure. And then we would actually need 2 different terrain types. So one would be now for the dirt, and the other one would be for the grass. So we add a second one here. Let's call that grass because it's green, and that one would be dirt. And now, according to the tile documentation, you somehow mark now all your dirt tiles somehow and all your grass tiles somehow, and then it just works. But for me, that I never understood what I actually need to highlight. I thought I know it, so I expected something like this, that when I highlight here the corners and in the middle then, for example, the dirt stuff like that. And that might be already sufficient, even if I highlight now all those things that I have here as well, that somehow it knows how to figure out and how to render stuff, but it never worked 100% accurately. And finally, I figured something out which is a lot easier to do and helps with this process. There is a second tab which is called Patterns. And there you see, let me zoom in a little bit, there you see what kind of patterns you need to highlight so that this specific terrain set between the dirt and the grass will work. And also to mention that as well, so if you want to have a third terrain that interacts with something, so maybe you have dirt, grass, and I don't know, a third option that interacts with those things that is described here, let's call that water, then you will see there are a lot more patterns then that you need to find. So always make sure that the graphic or the asset set that you have supports all these things, or that you are maybe an artist and can draw it yourself. But we keep it simple for now. So we don't have 3 different options. We just have 2. We have the dirt and the grass. So we just have those patterns. And now it's fairly simple, because now you just click on one of these patterns and then you just mark the tile which corresponds to that pattern. So the red one, if we check here again, that would be dirt, and the green one would be grass. So first of all, we need a tile which is completely dirt. That would be this one, for example. Then we have one where the dirt is in the bottom left corner and the grass tile is in the top right. So that would be this one here, and so on and so forth. So I will just click that now a little bit through and try to identify all of these things. Here's a special one. So there is the dirt at the top left and bottom right, and grass at the top right and bottom left. I'm not 100% sure why it needs all these shapes, but I just know that they are mandatory to figure out all the possibilities that could occur when you draw then, like, I don't know, roads with different corners and stuff. Oh, by the way, that was the wrong shape. I had to do it like this. So if you have then like corners and maybe intersections and things like that, then it just needs all those different shapes that it can always correctly then draw the terrain that you want to have. So that would be it. So you see when a specific shape or pattern is already used in your tile set, then it gets grayed out a little bit that you see that that one is used. And now when we go back to our map, there is now one additional trick that I never figured out and never understood. Because if we go now to our terrain set and, for example, select dirt, then we see a red square. So tiled does not know what it needs to do. Also with the grass, it does not know what it needs to do. So you might think, I did something wrong. There is something not working properly. But this is most likely intentional. And the reason why it does not work is that we defined here a terrain set between dirt and grass. So tiled knows when it has those tiles here, so the dirt or the grass tiles, then it knows how they interact and what it needs to render. But since we don't have anything in here, it's an empty map, it does not know what kind of rules it should apply. So in order for the terrain set to work, you first of all need to make one of the tiles of your terrain set available to the map. So for example, we can fill the entire map with dirt or also with grass. It does not really matter. Let's use dirt. And now tiled can actually use now the different patterns that we have set up. And you see that here. So we already see now the grass tile here. And when we start now drawing, then you see all the different possibilities and options that could occur. Tiled automatically figures it out according to the patterns that we have defined. And in addition, when you press or hold the control key, it makes a bigger version so that it's not so small. And it's, I don't know, it's a 2x2 square most likely for drawing. And that's actually it. So you see, the terrain set creation is actually not so complicated. It's quite easy, but at least for me, the documentation was never clear and I never got it to work. I just figured it out by accident a couple of weeks ago, where I found out, or I wanted to try out the terrain set again, and I found this pattern tab, and with that one, it was then pretty obvious how it works. And yes, this little piece of information I wanted to share with you. There are two additional things, or extra things, let's say. You could theoretically, let's pick again this grass pattern here, because those tiles here, for example, are also grass patterns. And also for dirt, we would have this one and this one, for example, which is also completely dirt. So that would be additional patterns which are available. And now when we come back here and start again from scratch once more, let me fill it out again with the bucket. And let's render again some grass. So now you see we have some variation in here. It's not just always the empty grass tile. It's sometimes something with a grass, sometimes with a tiny little bit of grass. So there's some variation to it. And this one can also be controlled, which is quite nice. There is a probability on each of these tiles. So you see here on the left side the probability of 1. And since all of these tiles currently have a probability of 1, they most likely occur almost the same amount of times and are distributed evenly. But for example, we could have this one here with a probability of, I don't know, 0.9, and that one here with a probability of 0.1. So you can play around here with the probabilities, so the tile will then use the one with the higher probability more often and the one with the lower probability less often. I personally did not use that a lot because I usually then just manually replace some of the tiles manually, but that would be one option as well. And finally, let's come back to what I mentioned before, the different terrain sets that would be here, because there's also an edge set and also a mixed set. And let me add here also always two different tile versions, which I think is the most common use case, most likely. And here with the edge terrain set, you see there are now different patterns. So I don't know how that is really described or what is the correct term for that in reality. But with a corner set, as you see, it's always the corners of a tile that are part of the pattern or that you need to mark for the pattern. But when you have an edge tile set or a terrain set, then you are not marking the corners, then you are marking the edges, obviously. So if we would draw now one of these patterns, as you see, the corners are not marked. It's always the edge itself, so that's the center of an edge. So you get different kind of shapes. I don't know where you would use a tile set like this. I have never seen one. Maybe that might be useful for pipes or something. I don't know. Or for a sewer tile set, maybe. I don't know. I never saw that and I've never used it. And the third option, so this mixed terrain set, is then obviously the combination of an edge and corner set. And you see already with just two different tiles, you have a billion of patterns that you would need to prepare already for your tile set. So for this mixed set, I have no idea at all when you would use that. Maybe you know it, then just let me know. But most likely the most common case I could imagine would be the corner set, as you have seen it here. They are, I think, in RPG Maker assets and so on. There you will see them as well. And maybe edge set, could imagine that this might also be useful. Mixed set, most likely, I don't know, is never used. Okay, so that was the quick thing about the terrain sets. Then, one more thing, one final thing. I will link a video in the description below where I also explain auto mapping, which is a different approach and a more time-consuming approach than the terrain set creation, as you have just seen. So creating a terrain set for two different tiles is quite easy and very fast to do. but it is of course limited to what kind of things you can draw. So if it's just basic ground stuff like here, as you see, that works quite well. So there is nothing in addition that you need to do. But if you have a maybe more complex terrain set, and we would actually have here an example. So for example, if we just have one tile, then those 3 tiles and also those 3 tiles would be very convenient to use if it's a very small road, for example. And currently, with at least I did not figure out how I could use the small ones, so the 1 tile size thingies with a terrain set. For that one, I personally would use the auto mapping feature, and that one I explained in another video that I will link in the description below. To keep it very simple and short, it's just a more advanced way or strategy to define your terrain set so that you can have an arbitrary amount of rules. You're not limited to those, I don't know, 16 patterns or whatever we see here. There you have an arbitrary amount of rules that you can specify and are more flexible with it, but of course it's more time consuming in the end. Good, then 2 little tricks that I also want to mention very quickly where I had some problems during the streams with Quilly Jumper. One of them was the collision editor. So let's quickly go to the collision editor. There I had, for example, the hero or the Quilly, the main character selectable in my terrain set. And then in this, let me do it like this because that's a default view. Then in here, I defined the different collision fixtures for box 2D. So let's just create here a couple of shapes. And the problem that I then had in the end was that I was not able to easily select them, for example, the bottommost object here in this collision editor, because there are overlapping fixtures and tiled. When I select something, then it picks most likely the one which is on the top, and the one at the bottom below I cannot easily select. So I always had to move them away to select the one at the bottom and then somehow move them back, which was very annoying. But also there I found something else, that there is a button here which is called Object List. And by default, it's hidden, at least for me, but you can add it to the right or bottom. And then you can easily select the shapes here, and you are not running into this problem with the overlapping, because you have here a very simple list view where you can select the different objects. And this view here with the object is actually also available on the map itself, which is also very convenient. So let's quickly, let's first of all remove here all these shapes so that they are not shown here in the map. And let's create here quickly an object map and also just place a couple of objects here. I don't know, it's not real objects, but let me just place here a few of them. And let's call one of them, for example, X, one of them is Y. And also here, you could imagine if you have a very big map, it's hard to find the object that you want to have. And also there is an objects tab here, where you then see all the different objects and the different layers of objects layers that you have. And when you click on one of those, then tiled will also jump to that specific object and automatically select it. So that's very convenient. I did not know about that. That's also a new feature that I found out recently. And the last thing about tiled that I want to show now is one more. So as you see here with this asset sets, there are 3 specific tiles for the light grass and the dark grass. And let's go back to the ground now. One more time, let's select one of these. And when we draw it, then we are a little bit stuck, because we can draw something like that, but we cannot make, for example, an entire field of dark grass like that. Also that one, you see, it's not correct. So it's not fitting together with the other tile. And I thought that's maybe a problem to the tile set. I would need rotated versions of these tiles, or flipped versions horizontally or vertically. And I did not know that tiled actually supports that, but it does, and also libgdx correctly renders it then in the game. I did not know about that. But there are actually buttons here at the top. So flip vertically, flip horizontally, rotate left, and rotate right. And with that, I think Z is the hotkey. Yes. So with Z, I can actually then rotate a specific tile and draw something like that. So then you can actually reuse the same tile multiple times. So I did not know about that you can rotate or flip specific tiles in tiled, and that this is also correctly supported by libgdx. So this is also, or might also be some useful information to you. And yeah, that's it. I think that is all the things that I wanted to share with you about the tiled map editor. Good, then in the second or actually third part of the video, I want to also quickly go through a specific task or implementation that I made, and it's related to tiled projects. So let me close here everything. We don't need to save anything. And I will open one of the recent projects that I'm currently working on. And in tiled, also during the stream, I use this so-called custom type editor, which can be used in projects where you can create enumerations and also classes in tiled where you can have different properties. And I found out during the stream that this might be a little bit annoying because you need to keep the information that you have in tiled and the information that you have then in your libgdx code base. Somehow they need to be in sync. And of course you can do that manually, but that's annoying. And as developers, we are quite lazy people. So I thought about automizing that. And I did that now, and I did it in the direction from tiled to the Kotlin libgdx code base. And there would be actually different approaches for that. And just to mention it, when you have here one of these classes or enumerations, you can actually export them to JSON format and then have a specific JSON file for a specific enum or class in tiled. And yeah, that would be one way that you get this information out of tiled. Then you would just need to parse this JSON file and do something with it. But first of all, I did not know about this export button when I implemented this functionality. That's one of the reasons. But also I think my approach is a little bit more convenient because you don't need to export anything at all. And the way it works, I will show you that now in a moment. So the way it works is that tiled creates this tiled-project file when you have a tile project. And in this file, this is also just very simple JSON format. And in this file, there is is it called key? I'm not sure with the correct terms or terminology. I will call it a key. One of the keys is property types. And as you see with the brackets that I used, that means in JSON that this is an array. So there are then an array of objects usually, so that there is then multiple objects defined under this property types key. And there you see then the different enums. For example, I had an enumeration for an atlas asset where you can choose those three values here. So it's a special effect atlas, the chars and property atlas, or an undefined atlas. So that's very simple. So for enums, you always have values. You also have a name, I don't know, storage type, if it should be stored as strings or integers and things like that. And some additional information like an ID. But important for the parsing process is that it's the type of an enum and that we get the values out of the enumeration. So that would be for enums. And the second thing would be the classes. And there would be then a type class. And there it's a little bit different. So there are then, instead of having values with all the different values of an enumeration, you have then members for a class. And a member is then a property with a specific name, a specific type, and optionally a default value if you have specified it. Or is there always a default value in tiled? I'm not 100% sure. It looks like it, so maybe this default value is always available. But those are the important pieces to know. So there are enumerations with a values key, where you find the name of the different enum values. And there are classes with the members key, where you can find the different properties of the class. And all of that lives within this tiled project class. So you no need to export anything. You have that automatically available when you create a tiled project. And the approach that I then use now is maybe a little bit more complicated than it needs to be, but just thinking into the future, if you would maybe use some automatic build tool, or if you have a specific pipeline when you commit to your project, then in my opinion, it is a good approach that the functionality to now parse this JSON file and automatically create Kotlin files out of it, that this is done via a Gradle task, but that is of course not mandatory. You could simply have a Kotlin file with a main class or main function and then do something with this file. What I did, I really added it as a Gradle task so that it could be automatized and also run in the CI/CD pipeline. But to show you now my approach, I used, first of all, for the JSON parsing, I did not use the integrated one into libgdx. There is a reason why I did not want to use that. I will mention that a little bit later. I use the Kotlin X serialization, which is, in my opinion, the standard in Kotlin to serialize and deserialize things. And also, I did not want to have this functionality as part of the core module of the libgdx project or of the desktop or DVM module. In my opinion, this is something independent. So what I did, I created a new folder, which I called util for utility stuff. And for people who have no idea about Gradle, I will just guide you through the things that you need to do when you have a basic project setup, for example, with GDX lift up, so that you know how you could add your own project here, because it's not so complicated, but you need to know what you have to touch. So the first thing is that, of course, you create the folder. So for example, I called it utility. And also in that folder, you need to create a Gradle file. In our case, it's the build Gradle file with the Groovy language. And in order for this multi-module project then to know that there is an additional one, so that there is a util project as well, you need to go to your settings Gradle, because in here, there you see that all the different projects or sub-modules that you have defined, that they are mentioned here. So there would be one for TVM, there would be one for the core project, and one for the desktop backend, this LWJGL3. And I added here now this utility package so that when we then refresh the Gradle project, that this folder is then recognized, and yeah, then it's part of our multi-module setup here. And the build Gradle file is fairly simple, I would say. The most important pieces are, first of all, the Kotlin X serialization dependency. So for Kotlin X serialization, you first of all need the plugin. All of that is documented on their page, so it's nothing that I came up with. It's simply following their documentation. And besides the plugin, you also need a dependency to specific formats that you want to serialize and deserialize. And in our case, it's JSON. So we need the Kotlin X serialization JSON dependency, and the version of the library that I used here is 1.6.3, which is not the newest one. I think 1.7.0 is the newest one, but it doesn't matter. Just most likely pick the newest one, I would say is the best one. But here as an example, we have version 1.6.3. And finally, we have then a specific task, which I call generate tiled enums and extensions. It's in a specific group, which is called Mesomoon, with a description. And there is a main class in this utility folder. So if we follow that here, So there would be IO GitHub tile generator. So that's the file. And in there is a main method. Like here, I will guide you through that in a moment. And we also need then a class path, which is from the main source set, the runtime class path, so that everything is available that we have in our main source set. So all the dependencies that we can use them then in the main class. And what is this task register? So what does that mean? So when we go to Gradle, for example, then we have here our utility module as well. And under task, we have those different folders or groups. And we have here a new group, which I called Masamoon, which is the name of the project. And in there, you have then this task. So this generates tiled enum and extensions. And that's it. And that's basically then just calling the main method of these tile generator class. So that's the basic setup of Gradle. Good, then in this tile generator class, so there is now a main method, and there are a few things that I will explain to you now. So first of all, we need to parse, of course, a specific file, and as mentioned, we want to parse this tiled project file. So since we are here in our utility folder, we need to go one up and then go to this tile project file. Then we just read the entire file, and what we get then here is actually the entire content here. So the entire JSON file, the JSON string, we will get that back with the read text function from Kotlin. And then we need to parse this specific JSON. And since we don't want to parse everything, so for example, we are not interested in auto mapping rule files, in commands, in extensions path, whatever. So we don't want that. So there is no strict parsing. And in order for Kotlin X serialization to ignore that, you need to set this ignore unknown keys and set it to true. Because if you don't do that, then you get an error that, that whatever you are parsing is not complete or things are missing. And to tell it that you don't want to parse everything, you just want to have specific pieces, you just say here, ignore unknown keys and set it to true. And then the most important function is then this decode from string, which is also coming from Kotlin X serialization. And basically we give now this JSON object, we give it the JSON content, which is coming from our file, and we parse there a specific object out of it. So that is now some custom stuff from our end. And I called that a tiled project. And how does that work? So in Kotlin X serialization, in my opinion, it's fairly simple. So you just add this annotation, this serializable annotation, and then you create, for example, a data class. And the names of the fields that you have here, so for example, property types in here, this is then actually the name of the key in the JSON file. So this property types that we see here, which is an array of something, is the same as this property type here. So this is how this parsing then in the background is working. So there's automatically a name matching, which is very easy. And we just need this simple annotation in order to get it work. And what we get back is then a list of something. So I called that a property type, which is again a data class. And from the property type, the things that we are going to parse is the ID, which is not really mandatory. Maybe I use that for logging, I'm not sure. The name, which might be useful because that could be the name of the enum class that we create in Kotlin. The type that we know if it's an enum or a class. And we then need either the values if we want to create an enumeration, or we need the members if we want to create extensions for the class object in tiled. So that's why we have it here. So a property type, again, is an ID, a name, the type if it's an enum or a class. And then for an enumeration, it would be values, which is simply a list of string. Or for members, that's a little bit more complicated. There we have a list of members. And member, again, is simply a data class. And there, the most important things that we need is the name of the member, the type, if it's a float, a string, or anything else, and the default value or the value itself. And the value is just a JSON primitive because it could be a string, it could be a Boolean, it could be a float. And using any here, I don't know, any I think did not even work. I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, the correct way to do it, in my opinion, would be a JSON primitive, which just represents a primitive data type. So string, integer, float, whatever. Good, and yeah, that's then almost it, I would say. So again, we read the JSON content from the file, we create this JSON object with the ignore unknown keys, and then we simply decode that JSON string and get this tiled project class out of it, so the custom class that we create. And then I made two different things. So for enumerations, which would be here, I really create enums in the code, so Kotlin enum classes. And for the classes itself, I create property extensions, which I also show in a moment. And there, the extensions could be either for a tiled map tile object in libgdx or a simple map object. So that's why here I have some mapping that the class map object, just that you see that, there is a class in this project file which is called map object here, which contains, for example, the speed, the object type, if it has an animation, the color of the object, the box2d body type, and so on. And this thing here is related to a tiled map tile. So the extensions that I create for Kotlin would be part of a tiled map tile. And the fixture definition class, that one would be an extension for the map object class in libgdx. And yeah, someone mentioned here in the comments if I used Kotlin Poet. And no, I did not use that. I heard of Kotlin Poet, but never used it. And I'm not sure if things could be done easier with Kotlin Poet, but that exercise here, in my opinion, is a fairly simple one. So what I did, just as an example here to create an enumeration, I simply write then a string with the build string method of Kotlin, where I have, for example, the package where it should be. Then I add a comment to the file that this is an auto-generated file and you should not touch it. And then, for example, the content of the enum class. So enum class would be the name, then a new line, then I sort the values and finally combine them together again with a new line and this comma separation and so on. And in the end, I simply write the string content to the file, and that's it. And one of these files would be this tiled object type. So when we go to that specific class in the code, then you see here, so the package line, then this comment that I created here, and then the enum class with the different values, which is coming from tiled. So it's just simple string concatenation, and that's it. So I did not use anything with Kotlin Poet, but let me know. So if you used it and if that could be maybe done easier instead of working here with strings, then would be interesting for me to know how it works. Good, so that would be the enum stuff, and the other thing is just the extension stuff, which is a little bit more complicated, but also basically just creating this string file. And just to show you the outcome, finally, that you see that as well, I called that file tiled properties. There I have the package again, then the import statements at the top, then this comment again that this is auto-generated. And there you see then, for example, the different tiled extension properties. So in tiled, to give you the reference again, when we go to the custom type editor and, for example, the map object, we have Atlas region key, body type, color, and so on. And all the things that you have here, those are then simply extension properties here, which are auto-generated. And yeah, that's basically it. So all of that, tiled map tile and map object property extensions, they are auto-generated out of tiled. And yeah, that is what I wanted to show you just in case you're interested, because it was one of the open points during the Quilly Jumper stream that, yeah, I wanted to automatize that. And I did that now, not for Quilly Jumper. That's a different project, a top secret project. Don't share this information with anyone else. But I did that, and yeah, most likely will reuse then this tile generator class here in other projects. And also you out there, I will of course share the link to the repository as always. If you also want to have a deeper look into it or reuse it in your project, then feel free to do so. Good, and that's it. Thanks for watching and have a nice rest of the weekend. Bye bye.